today in your village, somebody born into a madhouse, can they become Reverend Albert Okran in one lifetime? That's the question we must ask ourselves. And if they cannot, then what we are saying is that we have built a Santa Claus democracy in which the poor will remain poor, give birth to the poor, and their poor children will keep giving birth to the poor.
Turn around. Turning point. Yeah. He's a turn around. Hello and welcome to Springboard, your virtual university. My name is Albert Okran. Welcoming you to Ghana's foremost developmental program and that place where the greatest minds in the world converge. Springboard is brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation in partnership with MTN Ghana, the Enterprise Group, and the Ghana Growth Program, a collaboration between MasterCard Foundation and Springboard. Today we continue our series on Thinkathon, the power of ideas. We are celebrating 17 years of your virtual university that falls this August, and we want to explore the power of ideas, the good society, through the lenses of thinkers across our country in academia, in business, finance, industry, everywhere we can find them as we engage contemporary issues and foster intellectual leadership. My guest for today wears many hats. He is a strategic advisor and director, but he's also known largely for his questions he's asking about leadership and about our democracy. He calls it the Santa Claus Democracy. My guest, Yaw Nsarkoh. Yaw, good to see you.
Thank you very much, Reverend. Thank you for having me on your show, and thank you for sustaining this great service to society for 17 years. Congratulations to all of you who have built this brand and who have brought it where it is.
Thank you very much, and it's even made more special by the fact that you're joining us from thousands of kilometers away, by the power of technology. But yeah, we started this journey in August of 2008, and interestingly, our very first show was in the studios of Joy FM asking a simple question: how do we build the good society? And it was based on the writings of Russian philosopher Leo Tolstoy, who wrote, "How much land does a man need?" And 17 years later, we are asking the same question, and that's why Thinkathon is so relevant. What will be your thoughts on this journey and the relevance of the quest for a good society?
Well, that is what all of life would be about. We are trying, all of us, to one, imagine and envisage the good society, but also to say, how do we get there? And therefore, this is ultra relevant as a conversation. You deserve all congratulations for sustaining it. Your starting point, Tolstoy is a profound thinker who has been ageless, died many years ago, continues to remain relevant. And if I were to assess, and I've read many of the things that Tolstoy wrote, how much land does man really need was perhaps Tolstoy at his best, in a very simple, accessible, but deeply thoughtful way, as the characteristic of Tolstoy. He makes a simple point that the things that matter are not necessarily about piling material riches again and again and again, because at the end of the day, we do all of this and we end up in a small grave somewhere, which is the story of how much land does a man really need. The guy applied himself and eventually killed himself through the application of chasing vanity. And after he thought he had conquered all the land of territory or the world, of their world as he had defined it, in the end he lost everything because he had focused on the wrong things. That is the story of our society, but it is the story of many other societies which today are completely riddled with greed, with egregious consumerism, with a lack of solidarity, a lack of felt feeling. I can't think of a subject that is more relevant than this.
I am an avid reader of your posts on Facebook. And so let me pick a couple of your posts. One on aporophobia, a neologism meaning the rejection of the poor, a signature consequence of Santa Claus democracies. Let's talk about what exactly is a Santa Claus democracy. Then we'll go to the aporophobia.
So that was intended for an intellectual class. But I'm often told that I go onto the mountain and then the next time I'm quoting something from the street. So the street equivalent of what you just read about agoraphobia, the Santa Claus democracy, and that being a signature feature, will be Kofi Kinata saying Abunsam Mineba. I'll explain in a little while I say Abunsam Mineba is exactly a form of agoraphobia. Santa Claus democracy is essentially coined to try to point out that the demonization of democracy that is happening in our parts is actually misplaced, because what we're doing is not true democracy. True democracy, one, is not an imported concept. It is representative of the historical struggles of all people for finding formats and arrangements of government towards getting to the real society, the true society, the proper society, the good society, what you want to call it. And that has marked all societies of the world. That we have now associated it with certain particular formats and institutional arrangements is just a feature of mentalities and lazy intellectualism. The search for democracy is indigenous to human societies. The answers, the solutions that they come up with may be different. As Samir Amin once put it, the world must be powered by a differentiated polycentric approach. One planet, many systems, because our historical evolutions are different. Or the Yorubas say there are many routes to the market. That proverb has manifestation in many other African cultures. I could put many ways of doing it. So the first thing I want to establish is that democracy is not an alien concept.
Okay.
Western democracy may be an alien concept, and I question that even that is true democracy. But if you go back to the core definition that was given in the Gettysburg speech by Lincoln, its true meaning, government of the people, for the people, by the people, with the people, whatever else you want to add with the people, then that is the search that the human race has been in. But we've lost the essence of that meaning, and we now think that democracy is that you have a legislature, you have the judiciary, you have an executive, and they wear gowns, Victorian gowns, and that's democracy. No, democracy is much more than that. So let's get that right. Now, why Santa Claus democracy? Because our variant of democracy that we're practicing in Ghana, but also in many other parts of the world, especially in Africa, has been over-monitored. And it has reduced the institutional relationship between the governed and their governors, or their potential governors. Because in an election period, there are people who are offering themselves for potential governor position. It has reduced it to a transactional and mechanistic arrangement, which the Nobel laureate Wale Soyinka described as a public auction for the highest bidder. Look at the headlines in the contestation process. A lot of what is discussed is that I gave more money than you, I contributed more than you. People, when they're having these conversations, are talking about huge gifts that they gave to people. As I spoke about recently at the Academy of Arts and Sciences, the people who are even elected are under significant burdens every day to go to outdoors, to funerals, to weddings, and they need to make donations and so on. And nobody asks the question, where is this money coming from? They cannot fund it on their declared own salaries. They cannot explain it. So why are these questions being asked? So what you have then is a very decayed environment where the fund flows through the arteries of the political institutions are dense, opaque, and decaying. And if you don't question that and bring transparency to it, as I often describe, that becomes the root of all evil. So that's where the Abu Dhabi then comes in. We then stop looking at the systemic and structural causes of the decay and ferment that we are facing, and we start to turn to each other and point fingers. Say the squatters have come into our high-class neighborhood and they are destroying the neighborhood. Nobody is asking the question, what were the alternatives that were provided for them? Nobody is asking the question whether we have an educational system that equips them with skills and capabilities in order to be able to build themselves to access dignity. Nobody is asking the question whether we have ordered our land management system in a way that they too can access land and do productive things with it. Nobody is asking the question whether the basic infrastructure in the country allows people to be able to achieve their full potential. Nobody is asking the question whether the institutions of government are accessible to them in a real way. Nobody is asking the question whether we've built a culture of meritocracy so that we can have social mobility. I often tell the story, I'm sure that it's not different with you if I ask you, because we come from the same generation. My father was born into a madhouse in Akrokeri. His mother sold beef that were used to rub cake. But he was able to end up in your school in Infancy and go to the very top of the academic ladder after having attended some of the best universities in the world. Do we believe that today that is the general experience? And my father's experience, by the way, yes, it was for a small group, I agree. It wasn't available to everybody, but it is not atypical.
I've had a chance to ask.
Many families of our generation, they'll tell you the same sort of stories. Today, in your village, somebody born into a madhouse, can they become Reverend Albert Okran in one lifetime? That's the question we must ask ourselves. And if they cannot, then what we are saying is that we have built a Santa Claus democracy in which the poor will remain poor, give birth to the poor, and their poor children will keep giving birth to the poor. As Hannah Arendt and many other thinkers have put it, if you build a society in which you exclude so many, the mob destroys that which it is excluded from. There are many other ways of thinking. That's what James Baldwin meant when he said the most dangerous creation of any society is the man with nothing to lose. So in summary, the Santa Claus democracy is an over-monetized governance system that excludes the mass of the citizenry and treats them as tokens to be bought, to be bribed, who only matter at a given time.
Thank you, Yaw. Talking about Saito people going to university, it's a question I've asked Dr. Ishmael Yamson, who in my interview with him mentioned that he went from Saito to university and became chairman of Unilever. I've asked Professor Florence Dolphine, I've asked Alex Banfo, and for all of them who mentioned that they went through the Saito system, I've asked the same question about whether somebody today could actually go through the local authority primary school, as it were, and go on to achieve big things. But yeah, in Rudyard Kipling's writings, he talked about 6 humble servants, what, who, why, where, which, how, and how questions can really get us to examine ourselves, look ourselves in the mirror and speak truth to ourselves. You keep asking, why are we not asking ourselves? And I'm asking you, why are we not asking ourselves what is so obvious? If somebody stood on television and said, I gave this amount of money, and 10 years ago, that will be looked down upon. Why is it becoming so brazen? Why is it becoming so normal for someone to say that and get away with it?
When I was growing up, my father had hung on his wall somewhere two things that I never forgot. One was no condition is permanent, and the other was honesty is best policy. I do not remember growing up that I was ever presented a role model because he was rich. Maybe I grew up in an academic environment. I don't know, but I do. I suspect that it's not different from you. We did not those days when we talked about people who were exemplary in society, pointing to people like A.A. Kwapong and so on and so forth. I don't remember that there was ever a conversation about that. This person appeared on Forbes magazine, and that's what noble values. It's not that we were being taught that we needed to be ascetic and starve in order to be able to be something great in society, but there was a certain assumption around that if you held noble values, you would do well in the world. Now, you can articulate those sort of things at an abstract and theoretical level. But if you allow your cultural environment to depart significantly from that, so that you have built a government system which has resulted in a cultural system where people can see that dishonesty is paying materially again and again with no consequence, it becomes a dominant feature of your society. And those who are asking questions that you're asking, the people who are looked at as strange, the people who will say to you, you get your chance, you steal, you're then okay, and you have people like Reverend Okran talking about honesty. You hear those things, like honesty with your job. It's thrown and people laugh, but it becomes a dominant part of your society. And that's where we are right now. That we all just behave as if we don't know. The fund flows in politics, I say again, cannot be explained by known means of income. And if they cannot be explained by known means of income, and these are the people who are competing to govern us, then there's a real issue on the ground.
Yeah, will that be a microcosm of the society as a whole? Because it goes beyond politics. If you look on social media, if you look at what we celebrate, it would seem as if this is just a reflection of the whole society and what now matters to us.
No, absolutely, you're right. I do not think about politics as decoupled from the society. The society produces politics, and then the politicians become role models for what are endemic features, better or for worse. So, in talking about the politics of the society, I'm not saying that it's just a small target group of people and they are the problem. No, that's not at all. That would be escapist. You're absolutely right. But I also don't buy this argument that politicians always throw around when they are in power. In opposition, they are very critical and they hold the people in power accountable. But as soon as they get into power, they say we are all involved. This is all of us. I don't buy it. I say you cannot claim the privileges of office. There is a reason why. I gave the example recently. You needed to come to the studio today to do this interview. But if while you were coming, you needed to be here by a certain time, if some VIP switched on their siren, you had to park. You're both going to work. You have to park, and we accept that arrangement. It's a social contract by which we live. There has to be order in society. We accept that there will therefore have to be some hierarchy, hopefully, established by a meritocracy. But if you want to take those privileges, then you're more accountable than the average person. And if you don't want to be more accountable, let us remember that leadership is a voluntary option. They often say, oh, no, we are trying to do our best. But look at the number of them that are competing to be presidential candidates and so on and so forth. Are they really doing it because they all love us so much? These are the questions that we must ask. So you're right in saying that it's a reflection of the society. But culture in society is also driven significantly by two things. What governance system, in terms of law and order, framing and execution that the elites put in place, and the demonstrated behavior of the leaders, not what they say, the demonstrated behavior of the leaders. So when society goes into significant systematic fermentation, it is also, in a sense, a reflection of the failure of the elites.
Let me stay with your thoughts on the obvious tilting of the system in favor of the governing as against the governed and by extension the poor. Something you write about. Let me quote one of your famous posts. When a justice system begins to look like it exacts lasting punishment only on the poor, it digs the grave of our Santa Claus democracy. Extreme partisanship will be our doom. I won't try to guess the origin of this, but in your writings, if I quote the first one on the aprophobia, rejection of the poor, and then in this one, talking about the justice system skewed against the poor, would it be your considered opinion that this social arrangement ultimately it doesn't favor the poor, it doesn't favor the disadvantaged?
I do not know any system in the world that favors the poor. And therefore, the central task of development, in my view, is to eliminate, especially extreme poverty, but then hopefully also poverty, so that you move people not to become billionaires, but so they can live with dignity. So yes, I have to bring the discussion to concrete terms. A question I often ask is, can you give me an example of nolle prosequi used on a corn thief or a chicken thief? I pause for effect. Why is it always that it is the well-educated, well-moneyed that are giving themselves, by the way, not just a recent example, so that I'm not accused of focusing. You look at the changes of government. Who are the people who are often granted the nolle prosequis and so on and so forth? It's not the son of the orange seller. It's the powerful. So we learned where the famous philosopher said that the law takes on the characteristics of the prejudices of the ruling class. The way that it is formulated, if you want to get deeper in terms of examining the institutions, even the language with which we drive the system for the delivery of administrative justice can be very alienating. Even for us, the educated, it can be very intimidating. So you can imagine those who are not. Have we looked at ways in which we can deliver it in terms of cultural customization so that it's not that alienating? And people really believe. What is the cost of justice today? What is if you have a major, not even major, you have a conflict that needs some sort of judicial intervention because somebody has stolen one bag of corn? Are you going to be able to wait sometimes for the system to go for 7 years before you resolve that? So we must face the issue. The poor, the ability to get justice in the system that is configured today is never as high as the rich. But I don't say that, therefore, you must customize the system to make it possible for the poor. I say you must attack poverty. Not ossify extreme poverty, which is today hovering around 20%. Extreme poverty means that the person cannot afford enough food to provide the caloric intake for that they need to survive. So that's what we must do something about. How do we organize our society so that the majority of our compatriots can access dignity? I suggest that that is the historical task that faces this generation.
Yeah,
the Latin American theologian, since you're a reverend, you would like that, said, when I feed the poor, I'm called holy. But when I ask why there are so many poor people, I'm called a communist. He was speaking about something that is very real.
when I come back from this break, I'll ask you about language. I'll ask you about iconography. I'll ask you about the optics. I'll ask you about motivation. What drove you to go on this journey? And then we'll spend some time talking about solutions. How can we change this narrative? Are we being too audacious to believe that there is some change in this seemingly systemic drive towards a land of no return? So let me give you a moment to catch your breath and go for a break. If you just joined us, this is Springboard, your virtual university. My guest is Yaw Nsarkoh. I've been looking for him for, I would say, a decade, and I finally get to have him here on Springboard, your virtual university, as we explore the good society on Thinkathon, the power of ideas. I'll go for a break, and when I come back, let's begin to drive towards the solution. Are there low-hanging fruits we can engage? And are there, if I may call them so, high-hanging fruits that may seem out of reach, but with the right approach, we could actually grasp in our quest to redirect our steps in the right direction? Please don't go away.
Good business means seeing the possibilities and maximizing opportunities. Making sure you have a responsive support system backs your business goals. A partner that gives you a stable platform with reliable connectivity and seamless solutions, and better understands the tools required to take you to the next level. With so many moving parts in running a business, we do our best to provide you with some stability. The only kind of stability you can find with MTN Business Broadband, the fastest and most reliable internet provider in Ghana, making sure you stay ahead and stay connected, because we understand what makes your business tick.
Sign up today on broadband.mtn.com.gh or call or WhatsApp 0244 308 111.
MTN.
No stress. Submit your insurance claim online in just seconds on the Claims Express portal. Simply upload your national ID, cost estimates, pictures, and more to get started. Submit online, track progress, and get paid fast. Skip the paperwork and get back on the road with ease. Visit claimexpress.enterprisegroup.net.gh for easy claims and quick payouts with absolutely no stress.
Enterprise, your advantage.
Ready? Springboard Roadshow 2025 is here, connecting young people to Agric and ATZ. Meet us in Upper East, Northeast, Northern, Upper West, Savannah, Bono East, Ahafo, Bono, Oti, Volta, Eastern, Central, Western, Western North, Ashanti, and we close with the grand finale in Greater Accra, featuring Comfort Okran.
Be the light in your family. Be the light that when people look at every day, they are illuminated because they realize that there's nothing they can't do because you have dared to do it.
Reverend Albert Okran.
I meet people in very significant places, and they tell me, when you came to our school and said this, I took it and here I am today.
And a host of many other speakers bringing practical insight, mentorship, and energy to every stop. Expect hands-on trainings, education, inspiration, and discover amazing opportunities in Agric and ATZ. Entry is free, but registration is required. Dial *718*50# to register now, or call 0308-255-775. Subscribe and follow us on all social media platforms at Springboard Channel for updates. Springboard Roadshow is brought to you by Mastercard Foundation, Springboard Roadshow Foundation and partners. Springboard Roadshow 2025, 16 regions, 500,000 youth, one amazing experience. See you on the road.
Hello, good afternoon, Jala. How are you? Do you know why I called you this afternoon? I intend to onboard 500,000 young people across the country You are the 500,000 person who has been onboarded onto the Ghana Grows program as part of being that unique person around the nation. You would get the opportunity to accompany us to 5 regions of your choice. You will receive 50 books from the Ghana Grows program. You get 500 CDs as well as a cash prize for you. You're going to win 5,000 CDs start-up kit prize.
I appreciate it.
We are going to give you 50,000 megabytes of data. Have you on board as our 500,000 person for the Ghana Grows program. So you would network with other amazing young people like you. You chose to pursue a personal growth program. That you are winning all this because you were interested in developing yourself.
Right now, with what I am getting, I don't know, Ghana Growth, all the benefits they used to talk about that Ghana Growth can really bring to the youth of Ghana. I think now, yeah, I can stand anywhere and then say Ghana Growth is the best.
Now part of the family, a 500,000 strong family. Be hearing from the team in the office, and when we do, make sure that at least 5 regions you will be there live and colored. And so enjoy a fantastic weekend, and we'll talk again very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Welcome back to Springboard, your virtual university. This is brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation in partnership with MTN Ghana, the Enterprise Group, and the Ghana Grows Program, a collaboration between MasterCard Foundation and Springboard. I'll shortly be bringing you the continuation of my conversation with Yaw Nsarkoh, but let me quickly pay some props to Enterprise Group, and they're asking, what is a personal pension plan? And they say you can enhance your retirement benefits with a personal pension plan that offers the opportunity to grow your retirement income, ensuring a comfortable retirement lifestyle. This is brought to you by the Enterprise Group, and the number to call 030-263-4777. Email info@myenterprisegroup.io. Enterprise, your advantage. If you are a young person considering your options in the area of agriculture, agribusiness, and ATVET, just note the number 030-8255-775. That's the Ghana Grows call center or customer service line. You can call or WhatsApp that number to get support and direction about opportunities in these selected sectors. If you also would like to follow this conversation and others like this, just subscribe to the Springboard channel on YouTube, and you can get past editions as well as notifications when we go live. Our business for the day is Escasa. That is a fashion brand in both formal and casual wear, made from authentic kente fabric. Contact them on 0208905233 and patronize Made in Ghana goods. Well, my guest for today on Thinkathon, Yaw Nsarkoh, a director, advisor, and part-time academic. Yaw is a man asking loads of questions, and we are exploring some of the answers today in our quest to find the good society. Yaw, thanks for making time. Let me ask how you started out on this journey. Have you always been like that, asking questions when you were younger?
I would say yes, I think so. Fortunately, I had parents who encouraged us to ask questions. I often, now when I look back at it, I find it quite interesting. My father was at the top of his academic profession, but if by some chance, sometimes he would ask me why I was interested in those things, but sometimes he would deliver a lecture somewhere, or he would be talking or some of the things that he had written. I'd go and read them, And we would sometimes debate him. And he never said, I am a professor in the field. Why are you challenging me? So I grew up, my mother was no different. We would have discussions about everything, not disrespectful, but we were encouraged to be curious. Yeah, and I grew up at the time, the Legon community in which I grew up. Now, when I reflect on it, I see that we were really fortunate. But at the time, it was fairly normal. I would run into super scholars, like Professor Ebenezer Lane, a botanist of world-class pedigree. But he would never show off. When he would say something, even about his field, that us nosy and noisy youngsters who had no clue what we were talking about started to challenge him. You'd have the patience. And I can mention several from that generation who were the same. Reverend Nsarkoh, we used to play football behind his house. And sometimes we thought we understood his field in linguistics and theology better than he did. Between where we played football, between Professor Nsarkoh's house and Professor Yaw Nsarkoh, who was, again, an expert in political science and mass communication. They had produced this opinionated bunch of little children, and they had the patience to sit with us and to debate things. I remember conversations in the same way with so many that I could mention. So for me, that's the society I grew up in. What I'm now not used to is that you say anything, someone is contempt of this contempt of that contempt of what I don't know. Now we're even heading to the contempt of prophecies.
Did you engage Professor Jechi?
Very well. In those days, he was one of the younger academics. That's the way that we saw him. Because Professor Kwapong and the others came before him in terms of age. But yes, I knew Professor Kwame Jechi was very highly respected scholar. I knew him. His daughters will laugh when I say this, but they will say they expected that I would say. One of my signal memories of Professor Kwame Jechi was coming to our primary school to pick his daughters up. And they were girl guides, so I remember them with their uniform and ribbons in their head. They are now big women and big academics. When I say this, they go, you were out of your mind. I knew very well, not only as a person, but I've then since also studied his work. It's not celebrated enough in our country because we don't understand. There is a certain extent to which when universalist philosophers attacked African philosophy as not having a place. To some extent, the burden of fighting for a place of African philosophy and regenerating that the place of proverbs, he called them fragments, would compete with the best philosophy in the world. It fell on Kwame Jechi. The scholarship of that individual, the extent to which he alone placed Africa on the map of the best thinkers of the world. But this is our society. Today, I suspect so many people, when you say Professor Kwame Jechi, they don't even know who you're talking about. But he wrote a lot. Why are his books not being taught? Why is the media not discussing? You are asking, fantastic, I should celebrate you, but why are these things not discussed?
Let me quote Dr. Nkrumah on 24th of December 1957 in his broadcast. He says, "We shall measure our progress by the improvement in the health of our people, by the number of children in school, by the quality of their education, by the availability of water and electricity in our towns and villages, and by the happiness with which our people take being able to manage their own affairs. The welfare of our people is our chief pride, and it's by this that my government will ask to be judged." Would you say that this ethos, this outlook is still at the center of our thinking? And if not, how do we get back to measuring ourselves by the basic opportunities that we offer to the people that are governed?
No, it is not still at the center. Since coming Nkrumah, the neoliberal mania has completely consumed our development business. And we believe that the ideas of Milton Friedman are uncontested and unchallengeable. As I've been pointing out to people these days, even Francis Fukuyama these days calls himself a social democrat, and it's the thing that you just quoted from Kwame Nkrumah. Now, whether Nkrumah himself delivered it or not, I don't want to get into that, but conceptually, he was right in talking about it. Just sample the media, because I like to do things empirically. Sample the media. Our development discussions these days ask, as I asked recently, what is the average height delta of the adult male or adult female in Ghana over the last 30 years? Nobody can tell you. The media is not even interested. The conversation is always these days about fiscal consolidation. We have done this, we've done that, we've developed a language that we think is a proxy for development. That focuses on spreadsheets, not on human outcomes and tangible benefits to society. So when I hear people talk like this, I say, do we understand that these are just intermediate metrics? We are not trying to build a society where we say that we have brought down inflation, GDP growth is this and this for its own sake. We talk about those things, even things like exchange rate, stability, and so on and so forth. If you stabilize the exchange rate, and at the end of the day, your society is still engulfed by misery, you have done nothing. If you say that you brought down inflation and people have no food to eat, so what you're trying to do is improve livelihoods. And yes, in that conversation, sometimes it will feature, but not as a destination. The destination is the thing that Nkrumah was talking about. Are there more schools? Do people have good food to eat? Have we created a cultural environment where people can think? A cultural environment where people can think also has fiscal manifestations. A green society. Our society is drowning in uncollected garbage. Is this a society in which we can imagine a future? Those are the things that are really the outcomes of development. That's what you need to talk about. How do we build institutional arrangements so that the fatalities on the roads, they go down? But where is this conversation happening? Let's tune to a random number of media houses today. Some of the media guys are not happy when I say this. The conversation will be about that we have done this to good, and we have done this to that, and we have done this. An esoteric conversation with no anchored outcomes about what we are going to do. And we created this esoteric language. I was asking somebody yesterday, I said, what is this private sector-led growth? We talked about it. What does it mean? When the private sector itself is asking somebody to do things for it so that it can grow, you say that it is leading the growth. What does it mean?
Yeah, let's go on to academia. How can academic institutions, academics, contribute to redirecting thought to the right places?
If you would allow me, I would broaden that to say the intellectual community, not just academic community.
That's fine with me.
I think
very fine.
I think we'll be scapegoating the academics.
That way, then we can just bring in the media, everybody.
Yes. The professionals also have a role, and by professionals, I add everybody who has an education. Number one is the recognition that you and I, who benefited from public education, people don't remember that they did. But in our generation, most of us went to one of the 3 universities that was available in Ghana. They were all public universities. We sustained the taxpayers' money. That taxpayer includes millions of workers and peasants who themselves did not have the opportunities that we had. Their back-breaking exertion, sometimes to a fatal extent, is what enabled you and I to become who we are today. So we have a moral responsibility, a moral obligation, a moral mandate to ensure that we deploy that to improve their livelihood. That's the first thing. But the intellectuals' role, apart from the narrow vocational application of the capabilities that they have picked, should be to examine society and to think and to come up with ideas that improve it. To be able to do that, Chomsky said, the intellectual must follow the path of integrity wherever it leads. That was an elegant way of saying you have to respect facts and science, and that takes courage. Sometimes you must hold the mirror up. Sometimes you must say that the dogma that is being thrown is not evidence when you look at the facts. So we seek truth through facts, and the people who must build that culture the most are the intellectuals. So that, as I like to say, knowledge. That's what the Chinese under Deng Xiaoping, when they were championing the reform, he said knowledge is the primary productive force. A society that does not respect a culture of learning will perish. Because it is through learning that you move the frontiers of culture. We embrace so many things today that we call culture, which we should punish. They are not progressive in our societies. But if you are not examining these things, and if you don't have the courage to stand up and say, look, these things may have served some role, positive role in society 300 years ago, but in 2025 we don't need to have them, then you're going to have a problem. But when you talk about all these things, you say it's taboo. You have somebody, I like to give concrete examples. A guy comes up, he builds a school, he wants to provide protein sources for his students so that they can learn. And then somebody wakes up one morning and says the deity in the town does not like good. You pass it down. And I personally spoke to the guy. His parliamentarian had been there, the district assembly, people from the Ministry of Agric at the time, but they were not able to overturn it. So the school is closed down. The media is no longer talking about what happened to the guy. People who were going to school. This guy was working in Silicon Valley and returned to Ghana to live in the rural area to build a school so that people could be educated. We frustrated him because we say some deity doesn't like people. I don't even know the name of the deity. How can we embrace such things and say that this is our culture in 2025? And when you say this, some people say you're being intellectually snobbish. No. We need to move forward as a society. So that is the role of the intellectual. They must think, they must imagine the future. And not only in narrow parochial terms, where it becomes an incestuous environment, where learning is that they are quoting each other. No, they have deep connections and roots to their society, all elements of the society, including the rural areas. If you go back, I'm not mentioning something that has not existed in Ghana before. Read the research of that generation, J.H. Nketia, A.A. Kwapong, Gilbert Ansre, C.G. Baita, and so on and so forth. Kwesi Ampene. I'm trying to remember some of the things that I read. Kwesi Dixon. Go, because they are published. Edubuanyi. Go to those, you will see that a lot of the time they were sitting with members of their society in deprived areas, in the villages, and distilling things. Now, I've mentioned a very old generation, but if you read the recently published book by Kwesi Anka, which I think he published it in 2023 or last year in 2024. He was much younger. I still, today, when you say that you remember a younger Kwesi Anka, people smile and laugh. But I remember Kwesi Anka, who was seen at the time as one of the younger lecturers. Even to his generation, they are still doing that. Where is it today? I challenge the media. How many times are we having a systematic, fact-based conversation about how to improve life? I don't like to use the word remotest because remote sounds as if you have a center and an elite defines it. But in the far removed peripheral areas in our society, the rural part, how many of even the media people have ever been there? I was fortunate because I'm a consumer goods guy. I've been everywhere, into the mud huts and so on and so forth to try and speak to people. And I must confess, when I started doing that, I said to myself, I don't know this country which I call my own. Because I was ensconced in gone, well, that's motor school, then went to tech and so on. I think that I knew Ghana. But just Let's go to Aklagbanya or Pute. This is not even, we are not talking about the most deprived part of the North, 60 kilometers from Tema.
Yeah.
And you see adult women having their bath in dagger pits with brown water, then you know that, look, man, let's be very careful when we sit and hail the Santa Claus Democracy and say that it has brought great progress because 60 houses have come up in cantonments and you can now buy sushi next door.
Yo, we could do this all day, or we almost out of time. But one thing I would love to hear from you: what would be your one prescription? All cameras on you, all ears on you, Yaw Nsarkoh. What would be your one prescription for building the good society in Ghana?
Educate, 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 educate. Embrace learning, embrace knowledge, reward it, celebrate the educated. It is education that introduces social mobility. You and I don't know the history factually, but I can assume you and I are what we are today because of one generation that got education. Education that has an outcome of improving society. That would be my number 8. And if you want me to just state it simply, I say knowledge is the primary productive force. Embrace it. If we get it, we'll liberate our society.
Dr. Nkrumah says it's a common economic experience that wherever there is economic dependence, there is no freedom. Those are the thoughts of Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. What will be your Nkrumah reflections to wrap up today?
I'm not going to have the time to develop my thinking, so I must be careful. But he was absolutely right in that, and I consider Nkrumah to have done many great things. But my encouragement is that Nkrumah should be dynamic, it should be more dynamic. We should be examining his thoughts, and we should be willing to say that he got many things right, but he got some things wrong. We should not turn Nkrumah into a religion and Nkrumah into a deity that is unassailable and unquestioned. And while I praise him a huge amount, there are also things that he got wrong. And unfortunately, when I say this in Nkrumah's circle, even though many people consider me to have that kind of orientation, many people get very irritated. I often have to remind people, my own father served in Kwame Nkrumah's parliament. He was a member of the CPP. So I don't have a hostile or antagonistic orientation towards Nkrumah by design. No. But there is also no being on earth that was perfect. And we must examine. There are many things that we can learn from what Nkrumah got right. But we should also not present him as somebody who got everything right, because it doesn't exist. He was not God.
Let me steal a minute more of your time. Pictures, symbolism, iconography. You put on a television, you see the front page of a newspaper, on Facebook. Share some low-hanging fruits that just symbols, just pictures, just captions, something could help engineer the kind of thinking that would drive us in the right direction. Yaw Nsarkoh.
If we study history properly, there's no argument about what you're saying. The audiovisual means is the most influential. And the history of life, the history of war, the history of conquest is accompanied by propaganda. Now, propaganda these days is speaking on a pejorative term, but it was not always like that. Propaganda is about using cultural iconography in order to be able to influence decisions, and you can do that for good. In Singapore, for example, is a good example where propaganda was used by Lee Kuan Yew and his team to shape society, to improve it. Yes, when you say propaganda, you can also talk about Goebbelian propaganda, the Nazis, and what they did. So it's for us, collectively. I say we need a more conscious media. We need to decolonize our educational system so that we have the confidence to examine our society through our own framework. I learned from Chris Yankel's book recently, a proverb that I really like. We must tell our story, but we must be willing to embrace the entire world of learning Because while we are Ghanaians, we are also Africans and we are global citizens. And nothing in this world that has been produced by human beings is not ours too. So we must drink from the ocean, but understand that when we send the children to fetch water to come home, it will usually be from the wells. So our ability to be able to manage the pixel and manage the big picture, that's what will help us to succeed.
On a lighter note, is your background in engineering?
Yes, I studied chemical engineering and I'm a proud engineer.
So
my colleagues in the Ghana Institute of Engineering will not spare me if I don't associate fully.
Well, at least I give you a chance to do that. I'm just curious about how an engineer like you will be so well read in philosophy, history, governance, and it's just interesting for me to observe. I know I have a number of engineers that believe that engineers make the best managers, but let's stay out of that. How did you become so well read in the arts?
Well, thank you first for the compliment. But Ed Conway published a book last year called The Material World. I've recommended it to all my friends. I say read it because it's a fascinating book in terms of the way that it re-examines society. But the history of the human race is the history of the discovery of science and technology, the ability to apply natural resources to solve the problems of today, and the powering force, the sciences, the application of the sciences is engineering. So core in the center of human development is the engineering profession. Absolutely no doubt in my mind. And therefore, it should not come as a surprise that engineers are interested in society. It is a failure of an educational system that makes it seem as though engineers should be parochial. The proper training of engineers should make them well-versed in philosophy, culture, anthropology, linguistics, etc. Because at the core of society, why are you wearing glasses? And Conway talks about it. There was a time in the world where there was no glass. And so by now you will not be able to see. It was a chemical engineering process. I said somewhere and everybody burst out laughing. If you believe in Christian theology like you, then you believe that the Lord first separated the waters and the earth. That was a chemical engineering process.
Yaw Nsarkoh, what's your favorite word?
Education.
Oh, okay.
Learning.
Depending on the weather, my favorite word would be absolutely. Thank you so much for the time joining us all the way from the UK. Yaw Nsarkoh, a thinker, a man with many questions, a consultant, my good brother, helping us to appreciate what it will take to build the good society from his perspective. And I believe that many of the lessons he shared are extremely points of reflection as we navigate our way forward in this country, in this continent, and the world at large. My name is Albert Okram, thanking you on behalf of the Springboard Ratio Foundation and also for our partners, MTN Ghana, the Enterprise Group, and the Ghana Growth Program, a collaboration between MasterCard Foundation and Springboard. Just find the Albert Okran podcast and you will find editions from 17 years ago, 16 years ago, and 15 years ago, and reflect on questions that were asked then that are staring at us right in the face today, some of which, if we had answered well, would have made us far better than we are today. Let me thank our media partners, Joy FM, Joy News TV, and the Graphic Communications Group. My name is Albert saying God bless you, and God bless you.
He's always turning around. Whoa, turn around. Turning point, yeah. He's always turning